Time for a little carryover Wednesday action. Gotta always give a little shout out to my buddy Joey Cleveland, who helps me out with the music stuff. He has a lot of fun doing little rock versions of anything we need there for him. And today, for all of you out there, we're gonna talk some Turfway Park and some Sam Houston. Gonna spice up the middle of the week with a couple carryovers today. Both of these carryovers are straight, not jackpots either. So it's beautiful. We have some money to shoot at for the pools today. First up, it's going to be a PK5 carryover that begins in race number 1 at Turfway Park. We're looking at the past performances right here. Darren Zocali joins me. Matt DeSantis joins me. When we're talking Turfway, we had to bring in the big guns. DZ pays attention to Turfway out there as much as anyone. He's been doing a fantastic job doing a lot of spot plays and daily selections and stuff for Twin Spires. Also keeps an eye on what's going on at Turfway for some ownership as well for horses that he's involved in. How things going with you today, buddy?
Yeah, good. Anytime we have a carryover at Turfway, it's always fun. These Wednesday cards got added to make up for some from lost days, and it just worked out well that we get a little bit of fun on this Wednesday, double the pleasure, double the carryover fun with 2 racetracks that we like so much. But it's an interesting sequence. It's a sequence that I think a couple of people are going to rely heavily in a couple of spots that I think you might be able to zag when they zig, which is usually the recipe for success when trying to really connect on a big ticket. So it's an interesting sequence that I'm looking forward to talking about.
Matt, you and I hang out every Friday morning with our This Weekend in Stable dual live streams. And so now I've just started really taking advantage of you. It's like anytime I've got something going, that's how I do it. It's just like one thing and then that's, let's bring you on here and let's bring you on here. And before you know it, you're just hours long all week long.
I don't know what it says about my social life that I can just sit around waiting for the phone call from you every week and can jump on. But always a pleasure. And as I mentioned before we get started, Turfway is a track we don't typically talk about on our Friday shows, and so this is going to be a lot of fun to talk about a different track. And I agree with DZ that some of these sequences I think are kind of interesting, and there's some potential for some pretty big plays here. So I'm excited to talk about this and the Sam Houston one as well.
Yeah, so if you're just joining us and maybe you didn't realize that there were a couple carryovers today, you're going to have this first race at Turfway, which kicks off the PK5. That's going to go at 6:15 Eastern time. So you still have plenty of time, couple hours to get your handicapping done. We're going to help get you set up, and hopefully we'll lead you to maybe a couple horses that might have been outside the box for you, maybe horses that weren't on your radar. That's always what we're trying to do here when we have these live streams. And then at Sam Houston, that PK6 is going to start not long afterwards. It's scheduled for 5:25 Central Time, 6:25 Eastern Time. So they will be right after each other, one another. So you still have plenty of time to handicap for both of them. Did look like there was supposed to be some rain today in the forecast at Sam Houston. So far, it doesn't look like they're going to be taking anything off the grass. I reached out to track announcer Nick Tamaro, and he said, I don't think so far. Things change there quickly. So for any reason, it does change. We'll let you know by the time we're finished here, or I'll push that information to you on social media. So let's jump into it, fellas. Let's take a look at race number 1 at Turfway. DZ looking early on. There is a scratch of the 1 Omar Attack, and the wagering, I'm sure, is going to be focusing a lot on the number 2 Dom the Bomb for Larry Avelli. This horse actually crossed the wire first, most recently on December the 5th against Open 5 claimers, but was DQ'd that day. And, this is a horse who has 4 wins in the conditions of this race. A couple of them are at the $4,000 level. So this is a horse who actually fits really well in the conditions here.
It does fit well in the conditions, but this is one of those horses where, you could potentially see somewhere like 40% of the money in the pool run through this horse. And it's a 10-year-old now that hasn't raced in 3.5 months. And that's a factor that I think you need to consider when taking a stand on a horse that's going to be odds on in a race like this to start a sequence where, it does provide you an opportunity to potentially play against this horse. If he wins, so be it. You can come back and play a pick 4 in race 2. And if you beat him, you knock out potentially close to half the money in the pool in one swing, which is important. Plus, the scratch of the 1 puts him down on the rail, which is not necessarily a bad place to be going 5 furlongs at Turfway Park, but he does have another speed lined up right to his outside, which could make things interesting. And, we'll talk about Kitchen Fire in a minute, but those starter allowance races that he's coming out of are far superior to what anything else has been facing in this field.
So, Dom the Bomb, and for the record, DZ, I'm going to chuck him right off the bat.
There you go.
I'm pretty positive. And there are two horses that I really like a little bit. You were mentioning one of them. So is Kitchen Fire a horse that's going to be on your radar?
Yeah, he's going to be like my A horse on my key ticket. He's going to sit just outside the speed here. Like I was mentioning, those $5,000 starter allowance races, those are some tough conditions. Don't let that $5,000 money line, throw you. Those are some serious race horses that can move in and out of allowance company at different times. And when you take a look at what he's been running against versus what Dom the Bomb has been running against, and you take into consideration that he's going to be 3-4 times the price.
Just to give you an idea, Dragon Drew was way down in this race. The very same horse.
Look who's right below Dragon Drew.
Yeah. Way down
Beverly Park was in the race.
War Stroll went over and was favored against 16 claimers next out.
Yep. Absolutely.
So,
but look, I mean, if you look through these names, I mean, Beverly Park, who did not run well at Turfway Park. Beverly Park is the horse that won, what was it? I think 8 or 9 in a row at some point earlier in the year.
Yeah.
Rolled through starter allowance company. There you see that big win streak back there towards the end of the summer and into the fall. The horse runs seemingly now like every 6 to 14 days. Yeah. But after that defeat, he's come back and won, I believe, 2 of the next 4 or 3 of the next 4. So, I mean, Beverly Park would absolutely annihilate the field that we're going to look at here today. So, I think you have to factor that into your consideration.
Yeah. Kitchen Fire is going to be on my tickets. Matt, tell us a little bit about a couple of the horses you'll like to use in this opener.
Yeah, so I have a lot of the same feelings as you two on the 2 and the 3. I'll just mention the 8 a little bit. That's a horse that interests me, Ola Tal. And that's a horse that I think the speed figures are reflectable. Good trainer who does well on the claiming circuit. It's a horse that's going to have some fresh legs coming off from the layoff. Typically if the horses are stretching out on after a layoff, I'm a little skeptical, but in sprint races, I actually kind of like that. Very limited experience on the synth. Lone Attempt wasn't bad though. Finished 4th out of 10 with a respectable buyer.
Matt, it was pretty good, honestly. Dragon Drew was second that day. This guy was about 3 lengths off. He had to check early in between horses. Then he backed up a bit to 7th. He was kind of inside. He moved into the rail in a bad spot. He kept there. He got a little bit of room when he closed well. And then after that, he didn't race for 7 months. Yep. So, there might have been an excuse after that race. So I think it's a little sneaky. I'm glad you mentioned Ola Kaita. I like him a lot in this spot too.
Yep.
There's a lot of things about him that are positives, like a sneaky race on the synthetic. And then you dig back into some of the other races prior to that. Like I like that race at Belterra, the September 8th race, that starter allowance, that starter 5. So there were Jam and Cameron had won 5 of 6 going into that race. The race produced 2 next out winners. Crockett's Bluff won a 10,000 non-3 next out. Crockett's Bluff has won a 5 starter allowance at Turfway at the meet so far. Yep. And the 4th place finisher, Kate's Golden Dude, won a 12-5 beaten at Belterra next out, then won a 15 beaten at Mahoning Valley. That horse was favored in the starter 5 that Crockett's Bluff won at Turfway on December the 11th and just finished second against open 15 claimers. So I like the competition he's been facing. The Barnes had a really nice meet at also. So there seems like there are a lot of like little boxes that you can kind of check for positives with Ola Tal, with the way that the horse can kind of sit, drawn pretty well, can show a little bit of speed, but can sit off a bit. And especially if you don't like the 2 and you're trying to use a couple others, I think this feels like one of the logical other horses that you'll probably want to include.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, Ola Tal is going to be on a lot of my tickets. I might even have one where I single, but I like the 3 quite a bit, who we both mentioned earlier. And I couldn't get really creative or crazy with any of the bombs. I just didn't really love the bomb.
There's one horse that I think is a little bit of a wild card that he's not going to be on my A ticket, but I'm going to use him defensively because there's a couple of angles that might pop up. Number 9, Wild William.
Okay.
So this is a horse that 14 months ago was beating 35,000 downwinners of 3 life claimers on the turf at Belmont Park. Ran against $50,000 starter allowance company last year up through August, September. Obviously, there's some kind of an issue that he's now a $5,000 claimer. But on December the 19th, this horse did run 3rd behind Dragon Drew, who we've talked about a couple of times. Last 2 races are not very good, although the speed figure in the last race is not bad when you compare it to the rest of the field. I'm not saying that there's anything that jumps off the page at me that says you have to include this horse, but would it shock me if this horse runs better, seemingly a little bit out of nowhere, based on some of the back class and based on the race against Dragon Drew? It wouldn't. So if you're taking the approach of you're building a ticket against
these are the kind of horses that you want to throw in.
Yeah, and by the way, if you look at the live odds right now,
taking some very early money, right?
It seems like somebody else may be catching on to this as well.
Somebody went and put a 20 spot on Wild William early on. So
here I am thinking I'm all slick. I got a 20-1 for you, 7-2.
So that's race number 1, and I guess the entire approach, or maybe the analysis that you'll take from all of us, is that I don't think in any way, shape, or form Dom the Bomb feels like a standout single cinch at all. A horse who's going to be in, the starters, if just comparing some of the races that Dom the Bomb comes out of versus some of the races that a couple of these others, they're a little bit tougher. He clears, he could still be very tough, but you get to the point, like Darren said, now you're a 10-year-old. Every time you start and you stop and you start back up again, it's not quite as easy to do, so race number 1.
And by the way, if you disagree with us and you like the horse, that's fine.
Single.
But the only thing I'll say is this. I think one way or another with a horse like this, you have to take a firm position.
Absolutely.
You're either in on this horse
or
you're out. This is not a race where you're going 5 deep and including him. I would not take that approach at all.
No, it's a single or you're chucking him, and then you can go 5 deep if you want to do that, and you're chucking him, and you want to make sure you use all the other horses that you sort of like, the couple other, second, third choice logicals, and maybe 1 or 2 creative horses like a Wild William type that Darren was mentioning. I guess the only horse we'd mention would be Arba. If this horse has some pretty big speed, and so a horse like that has shown that speed and has shown some of that speed on a synthetic surface. I mean, even 2 starts back at Mountaineer, this horse won by 9 on a sloppy track and has a little bit of quickness. So for some reason, if down towards the inside, Dom the Bomb did not get away alertly, now he's drawing the rail, as Darren mentioned, and maybe he took a bad step, and this horse were to clear off and get the lead, he might be intriguing at 5 furlongs, if he got the lead, second start off the short break, or even at least being a horse that could maybe push Dom. Because I generally get the feeling with horses like this who have a lot more speed and they don't show it in one of their starts. He drew the rail last time out. The start was kind of fine, but he was right behind the leaders, and then he got shuffled. So it's a little deceiving in the running line. I think they'll try to get aggressive with him too, and he may be the one to at least push Dom as well as Kitchen Fire. Like Darren was mentioning, you got 2 horses now right to your outside that are pretty quick. That may make that trip even tougher for him if Arba can flash a little speed. So yeah, if you're getting creative, maybe throw one in with Arba here in the opener of the carryover pick 5 at Turfway Park. Let's jump into race number 2. Matt, who are you looking at in race number 2 as horses to use in your pick 5?
Yeah, so there's a couple that I look at. One is K Rules, the 5 horse going off at 4-1. This is a horse that dropping down in class again from maiden special weight to maiden 40, now down to maiden 15. Sometimes those repeated drops are a little bit of a red flag, but this is going to be a second off a layoff. Didn't necessarily run poorly last time off a layoff, but just, didn't really make up any ground. Was able to pass some people coming down the stretch, but that was about it. But the one thing that stands out about this particular field is there's really no obvious early speed at all. And so I have a feeling this might be a race where if somebody is just aggressive out of the gate, this race might just be there for them. Because if you look, there's nobody who loves the lead necessarily out of all of the horses in this one. So K Rules was a horse that I looked at. And then the other one was Command Central was a horse that I liked a little bit as well. This is a horse that, did look pretty nice second time out off the layoff, came in third just last time out on the synthetic. Nice speed figures. Like this horse a little bit more than Flight to Paradise, who he actually just finished a little bit in front of last time out. So those were 2 kind of shorter priced horses that I liked. But then the other one that I thought was just kind of fascinating, maybe a little bit of more of a bomb, was the 2 Powerful Point. This was
And
a
I think
horse
they
that.
just scratched this horse.
Oh, did they? Oh,
I
okay.
think so. Yeah, I
Nuts. All right.
think the
I-
two's out. Yeah,
All right.
Powerful Point just got
Yeah.
scratched. Yeah, because
All
I
right. Well,
had some questions about Powerful Point myself too. I thought that, especially when Corrales takes notice like that, and this
that's
horse
exactly
had
what I.
legitimate trouble throughout a few. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh well, but so those are two horses that I was looking at in terms of in terms of Command Central and K Rules.
Yeah, piggyback your point on K Rules a little bit. On January the 15th, kind of got squeezed out of a spot and was 9th of 10 early on, moved inside, moved into some traffic, got a little bit of room, showed some nice late energy. The two synthetic races, they're a little bit better than they might look at first glance. And you're right, this is a pretty sizable drop in class. I think there's a something there. I mean, look at who K Rules faced in some of his earlier races. Proxy, who's a multiple graded stakes placed, Palazzi, who's a stakes winner, graded stakes placed, Folsom, who's multiple graded stakes winner. One of those races had 4 next out winners. Harvard won a first level allowance next time out and earned a 90 buyer speed figure in doing so. So he's faced some pretty tough company. And then in some of the races where he's not been facing the monsters, he's actually been pretty competitive. Like, the Indiana maiden special weight race is pretty good. Like, that's the type that would stack up really well in here. So I don't really have any complaints. He'll probably be on a lot of my tickets, second off on the drop. You mentioned the 9 also, who did get going late for third. So now you're going to go third start off the short break. That was the first start on synthetic. DZ, who are some of the horses on your radar in here?
Yeah, this is a spread race for me. I don't have a strong opinion. I'll mention a couple of things. The 8 Scat Shack at a long shot price, I think, is a horse you want to use going to Gennaro Garcia's barn for the first time. Cutting the claiming price in half from 30,000 down to 15,000, has been relatively forwardly placed against some turf maiden company at the fairgrounds. Obviously does not finish the race as well. I'm kind of hoping that the move to the synthetic surface perks this horse up just a little bit on the barn change. Just a horse that I think at a big number you want to use. Mm-hmm. The 7 Kevlar, you're getting no value, but it is the speed fade angle with the double drop in class going down from maiden special weight to 15,000 after showing good speed before tiring last time at the maiden special weight level. So I definitely think Kevlar has a chance to move forward. The other horse that I'll mention, which is interesting just on a pedigree standpoint, number 3 Mountain Time.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like much on paper. He's a full brother to Chasing Time.
Yep.
Who is a major contender in the Rebel Stakes on Saturday. Now, obviously, this horse is a far cry from that level of competition, but it's Cypriano Contreras. It's a horse that did show improvement last time out at Oaklawn Park and is switching over to the synthetic for the first time while being offered up for 15,000. They probably could have put this horse in for 5,000 if they wanted to off the last race. They didn't do that. They put him in for 15. He's a horse that wouldn't shock me if he were to step forward here, if maybe that pedigree kicked in a little bit. But for me, this is a massive spread race, and being able to go against the favorite in the first leg, probably using 2 or maybe 3, enables me to spread out here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Mountain Time. Even small things like the Dam one on the synthetic. I like Chasing Time a lot. I picked him in a fantasy league, so knock on wood, I hope he has a good race this weekend. And Mountain Time, his race wasn't bad. He was sort of a step slow at Oaklawn. It was his first start going long. He was in between horses. He was in the best spot. He kind of had to back out of it, and then he moved to the inside. There wasn't a ton of room, and he angled out. He was a clear-cut second that day. He looks like he's improving, as that was his first time going long, and that was his best start. So now he's going to go long here, and maybe he has a little bit of improvement on the synthetic. I think there is plenty of upside with him in a race that feels like a spread race. These are the type of horses I'm looking to use in a race like this for sure. So he comes out of a couple productive races. You mentioned the barns having a nice solid meet, just a lot of little things, again, with the horse that's going to be a middle tier price. So I think he's worthy of inclusion. I think we've hit on a lot of the same horses, the 5K Rules, the 3 Mountain Time. I had him stacked like 5-3 Kevlar. Yeah, he's probably got to be used. He was asked for speed in a race, and then a couple others were asked for speed. So he kind of settled and he moved and he kind of tried to back up and start and stop. It didn't really work. If they just got aggressive with him, he'd probably run pretty well in here. I'm glad you mentioned Scat Shack also. DZ, he's one if you're spreading out a little bit. So yeah, we're on a lot of the same. I don't know what to do with Wamigo, who, 2 back was so good.
Which horse shows up? Yeah.
Right. Last time out, he had really no legitimate excuses, and I thought K Rules had legitimate excuses if you were going to want to use one of the 2 of them on the drop.
The only excuse I can give you is that if you don't break well from post 10 going a mile at Turfway, you have no chance. It's just that first turn comes up really quick. If you look at the post stats at Turfway, post 10, 11, and 12 really, really struggle going a mile. Once you're back 10th, 11 lengths behind through a 24-second opening quarter, you're not making up any ground from that spot. So that could be the excuse if there is one, because the race 2 back is awfully good. Or he could have just regressed off a good first time off the layoff start, and now he could take another move back forward. It's certainly possible.
That is race number 2, and in a very wide open second leg of this pick 5 carryover sequence at Turfway. Let's jump into race number 3, and we'll take a look at these maiden $7,500 claimers in here. They're going to be going a mile, and I don't think we had any scratches here on this one that I checked. Nope. Let's start back over here with you, DZ. Who are some of the horses you're thinking about using in here?
I'm going to use the 1 C Lane, who's drawn down to the inside, stretching out around 2 turns by Liam's map out of a Bernardini mare. Was within 4 lengths of the lead, going 6.5 last time from post 8. I think they're going to get aggressive from this rail spot and try to go to the front. If you take a look through the field, there's certainly not any kind of abundance of early speed in the race. Somebody's got to take grab of the racetrack here. Why not be the horse closest to the rail who's going to be into that first turn before everybody else? So I do think C Lane on the stretch out from this rail draw is one that is absolutely interesting against this field. And then when you go through the rest of the group, I mean, what do you hang your hat on? I mean, class dropping horses in bad form. Which one is gonna run well? I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
It is.
The only horse that I'll mention on the class drop that I have no idea what to do with, the 6 Lockdown Lover has not run a step. Ran a little bit early last time, but for the most part has not run a step. It's Rudy Brissett and Alex Achard. It's a son of Tourist out of a stamina latent European pedigree on the bottom side. Ran against Steinbeck, who was a classy bred horse who was dropping in class from, I think, maiden $150,000 claimer into that win. Manolito came back to win. Dropping G's came back to win a maiden special weight and then ran second in an entry-level allowance. Now, granted, he was anywhere in shouting distance, but bottom line, he's been running against much better horses. Is he ever going to show up? It's kind of like a now or never spot. I wouldn't let him beat you because it's not like there's really much to point to in the rest of the field, which if you figured it out, this is a spread race also. Thankfully, I have no spread coming up in the next 2.
Yeah.
But this race, you got to get yourself some coverage.
Yeah. Matt, who are some that you're including?
Yeah, I agree with DZ about this being a spread race. I mean, this is tough to really hang your hat on any one horse. I actually did have the Lockdown Lover as a horse that was intriguing to me for a lot of the same reasons DZ mentioned. Just, when you go back and you look at that very first race and you see the number of next time out winners, you go, well, this horse ran against some pretty good company and certainly for this field has run against better. But it is kind of a now or never situation. The horse seems to be working out pretty well. We'll see if any of that speed can translate. The other horse that I'll mention, which is going off at a kind of a short price, is True to Coton, the 3. That's a horse that, is gelded now and, tried the synthetic for the first time from a layoff.
You're trying here with this one, right, Matt? I mean,
it is.
First time gelding, second time synthetic, second time Turfway, second off the short break, second time new barn. There are a lot of reasons why this horse could take a little step forward and improve.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't love the price at 4-1.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that I don't like. If this horse was 12-1, sure, that would be great.
Reflective of the field he's running against too.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, that was the only one that I thought, well, maybe there's something there. Maybe this horse runs a lot bigger than his past performances show. But I agree. This is pretty spread.
Yeah. The one who Darren mentioned, definitely going to be on my tickets.
Yep.
C Lane, who that race wasn't quite as bad. Settled fourth, kind of about 5 lengths off, was 3 deep, was in the clear, made a slight bid, but the winner was already gone and had opened up. Going to be more forwardly placed on the stretch out now 2 sprints, 2 a route. This horse got a little action in both starts also. It just in a little too tough in the debut. Lots of things to like. Second time on the synthetic. I'm using the 1 all over. The 8 probably on the tickets too for me. That runner up, like that's sort of like the measuring stick kind of race. Like
up with Lasix.
If none of these droppers wake up, maybe they're just not that good. Like that race that he ran last time out probably is good enough to be right there.
You have to use the 9, by the way.
Absolutely, because
just from the angle of he does not have to be much
to beat this group.
Yeah,
that's it. He has 3 winning sibs, and there's nothing. I mean, and the work tab is steady enough. There aren't very many holes. There might be in there. I mean, you have a pretty steady from about December. You know, there's maybe one work that looked like it got a little bit backed up, or there may have been one in between, and that may have been just a weather thing. You know, so I can't. Yeah, I'd have to use Bet Your Life too.
And he's a half brother. He's a half brother to Face of Victory, who's won 3 of his last 4 at Gulfstream, including the Claiming Crown Express 3 starts back. So, you know, he's certainly bred to be okay. I mean, Shaking It Up, of course, is not exactly the world's most renowned stallion, but it's Michael Tomlinson with a first-time starter. It's a horse with a steady work tab, and he is running against the field that you could put a question mark on everybody in the race.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a brutal one. This is a tough one. As many as you can afford.
I wish I had a strong opinion because this would be if you somehow came up with a strong opinion that you could lean on in this race and go against the grain where everybody is spreading here. That would be fantastic. I just don't have one.
Yeah, it'll be combinations of the 1, the 9, the 8 for me probably on most, and then Then I'm going to start on other tickets using a lot. The Lockdown Lover probably gets included. True to Codin probably gets included. Code Clear. I don't even know if I completely dismiss that horse. So yeah, this is not a strong race, but from a pick 4 or pick 5, it's a really challenging kind of race because it's not one where we at least can feel really confident about trying to get a little separation, which you got to try to do in these sequences and what you'd love to do if you had some semblance of confidence. But let's move to race number 4. And we've got maiden 15 claimers in here going a mile. DZ, where are you going to start?
Yeah, this race. I actually have a pretty strong opinion. And it's a little bit against the grain. I don't like the favorite. I like the 1 and the 3 here. I'm only going too deep. I like Gorilla Girl quite a bit. If you go back and watch the replay, she is a tall, long-bodied daughter of Sky Mesa who probably wanted no part of going 6 furlongs. I think she's going to get better as the race gets longer. It doesn't look like it on the line. She was finishing the race better than she raced previously, coming out of the gate and into the turn. She was chasing from 4 wide from the back, going 6 furlongs upon debut. She took money. She was only 7-1. And by the way, everything that's come out of this race has run well. Everything. And I'm not just saying that because we own the winner. It's true. It's true. Where if you take a look,
well, you pay attention to those kind of things more when the horse that you have wins. You kind of like to see how the horses that they beat have done.
Yep. The horse that ran 2nd came back to finish 2nd in a maiden special weight. The horse that ran 4th came back to win a maiden 30,000. The horse that ran 6th came back to win a maiden 40,000 at Oakland, was disqualified, but still finished, in front first. The horse that ran next to last came back to win for $15,000. And by the way, Gorilla Girl finished in front of that horse, and here's Gorilla Girl winning for $15,000. So you could see the angles there are in place coming out of a key race. And I think on the cut down in price and the stretch out with the addition of Lasix for Ryan Walsh, who's been really good to start the meet, winning 3 of 12. Definitely think you can look at some angles there, as well as the 1 Lucky Wise, whose 2nd race back off the layoff, stretching out around 2 turns again by looking at Lucky out of a tail of a Cotty mare, got the nice tightener under her belt going 6 furlongs. You like the way that she finished there. She got a bullet workout prior to that, so she was sharp going in. They tightened the screws a little bit more. They keep her at the same level. They move her out around 2 turns. Now you get the much better performance from the horse that wants to route. For me, that's where you go. I don't like the 6 Hoops and Baskets. I don't like the 7 Irresistible Lady. I think Hoops and Baskets got gaps in the races from June to December, off 3 months again. Irresistible Lady, October, December, February, fine, but is yet to run a buyer outside above a 36. Those are favorites I want no part of. I think you can get creative here and go against them.
Lucky Wise, I've got everywhere. I like quite a bit. Lucky Wise's race last time out was a good start but 3 or 4 others were forwardly placed. So he ended up backing up. She ended up backing up, and then she got stuck in a bad spot on the inside, and she ended up back to 8th. It was really weird when you saw where she started, and it's like, oh, how the hell is she in 8th right now? Like 7 or 8 lengths off of it. And then she angled around widest of all, It was a race where there was no passing. The top 2 pace setters finished 1-2. She ran deceptively well in there. That was her first start for this barn, her first start in a few months. This is a good barn who is very, very capable. So she's going to go second off, second time new barn, second time Turfway, second time synthetic. Lots of reasons why she should take a nice step forward in here. I think she's a must use in this race for sure. The 4 I kind of like a little bit, which is funny because I don't love Irresistible Lady at all, but I thought You So Money Baby has had tough draws in, the last 3 races, has been parked out wide. And this horse has gotten sort of hooked, was 6 deep going into the turn, was 4 to 5 deep all the way around, brutally wide chasing slow fractions. The horse was only like in the 9-10 to 1 range the last 2, so wasn't hopelessly out of it. Because when you dig back into these races down here at Churchill, they're not that bad. They're really not. There's some ability here with this horse. I don't know if she really loves the synthetic, but I think there are some excuses for why I can eliminate and give her maybe another shot at a price. I mean, even when she showed up against Maiden Special Weights on the synthetic, that race wasn't bad at all. There were a couple next out winners with Valentina Day and the runner-up Lagarity there. So I'm going to throw the 4 in, I think, in some spots here at a price. Another maybe price horse that I would be looking at, because I'm with DZ. I didn't like the 6. The 7, I prefer the 7 to the 6, but I'm not in love with the 7 either. Paradigm Shift on the slight, after a horse who went long last time out, and I just did not love the trip. It was just kind of wide, and could be forwardly placed in here in a race where I don't think there's all that much speed on paper in here either. So 1, 4, 8, some of the horses that I kind of like, and they're, not necessarily horses who I think are going to be the shortest prices either. Let's get to you, Matt. Who are some that are going to be on your ticket?
Yeah, DZ and I see the 1 and the 3 very similarly. I really love that 3, and that's one that I think is going to run big. And that's also one where if you just dig into the trainer stats, if you're not familiar with Turfway, you look at it. I mean, there's a limited amount of times the jockey and trainer have teamed up, but they win 2 out of 5 times with a $14 ROI. So, that's not so bad. But so there was a lot that I liked there from Gorilla Girl. I will just mention one other horse. I would probably just go 1-3, but if I do build a little bit deeper, I think the 10 Mississippi Muse is an interesting horse. That's a horse that's coming back now to Turfway after running on the synthetic once. So it's again, second time Turfway, second time synthetic. So there's some things there that was his best effort really on the synthetic. This maybe feels, Gino, you can appreciate this. This feels maybe a little bit more like a stable duel type of horse. Like, I don't know if this horse is going to win, but this is a horse that I feel is going to be around the board.
And it's got your running line. Your Failed to Menace.
Failed to Menace, exactly. Any horse that fails to menace, I'm all over that horse. I'm not actually all over that horse. I just think it's a funny racing note. But yeah, I thought that was just one where I think there might be something there. But again, I'm pretty all over the 1 and 3.
Okay, let's close things out over at Turfway Park. We're going to head to race number 5. Hopefully all of you are live heading into the 5th race, and then you can kick back and look at the payouts and how much money you will hopefully be alive for. And DZ, who are some of those horses you want to have once you're 4 for 4? Now, we did get a couple big scratches in here. Actually, mainly one big scratch. The 9 Sherwood Avenue is out. So from a pace perspective, that definitely will change the race. That was a horse for Wesley Ward who was going to take a lot of money. So no Sherwood Avenue. One thing I will ask you, though, in speaking with you over the last couple days and in looking at some of your social media, I feel like the 12 might be something that when you're out there, Coach John Wooden, with the young kids, and one of them doesn't want to listen to you, Coach Darren Zocali is the judge and the jury when you're out there with the boys, right? I feel like this is something you might be saying.
Yeah, in order to get them motivated. I'm not going to be betting on them. But yeah, no, listen, coaching 3rd grade basketball is a trip for sure. And sometimes you got to be Judge Jerry. You just can't be executioner. They throw you out of the place.
Exactly.
I actually do have a strong opinion in this race to the point where I'm singling. I love a horse. Number 4, Presumptive Closer.
Nice.
Presumptive Closer's coming out of a race at Gulfstream Park, won by American Starlet, who actually just ran today at Gulfstream. Was the 6-5 favorite in an entry-level allowance, got left at the gate. rushed up into contention in the far turn, got to be second at about the 16th pole, and then finished fifth, losing about a three-way photo for third. So I didn't really get much out of that particular race, but it was a Wesley Ward horse debuting first time out. The runner-up, you see right there on the screen what that horse came back to do. Winning by 4 1/4 lengths with a 94 Beyer speed figure. The third place finisher is a Todd Pletcher, son of More Than Ready, out of the mare Harmonize. So that was a key race. Now, if you go back and watch the replay, Presumptive Closer was breaking from the far outside, going to go into the gate, does not break at all. They're gonna release the horses, and she's going to kind of hop, or he's going to hop coming out of the starting gate, get left, probably spot the field a length and a half, which is not here. You can see it right there. There you go.
He's
right at the back.
And it's done.
That's it. Going 5 furlongs at Gulfstream when you've got a Wesley Ward horse on the lead, that's the end of the race. Now, he's not even in the picture. But if you watch the race now, all on his own, he's going to catch up to these horses. And there he is right there, very willingly, all on his own. Jockey's not asking him to do anything, just sitting chilly on him. Now they go into the far turn. Things are going to tighten up in front of him. It looks like he's got a horse, not needling on him, not asking him to go, just sitting there. Now what do? You got a first-time starter here, a young horse. Do you go outside around 4 horses? Nope. I'm just going to sit right here. It is what it is. I can't win from here. I'm just going to wait for something to open up. I'm still waiting. Now I'm going to swing out. Going to race a little bit green. I'm going to brush with the 8. But right there, you could see he was starting to accelerate when he switched leads, and the 8 came over and brushed with him. And he's going to finish an even 5th, lose a photo for 4th. That's a good race.
Yep.
It's a good race that can move this horse forward. I think the horses that ran 1, 2, 3 are all legitimate horses there. And coming into this particular maiden special weight, now even especially with the scratch of the 9 Sherwood Avenue, when you take a look at the rest of the field, Giant Nova is fine. I mean, second beaten neck last time, but there's nothing in here that you say that scares me that much. And I think this horse putting the blinkers on is a world of upside. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, half brother to 3 horses or 4 horses that have combined to make $2.4 million, including Bone Raison, who was a really nice runner, made over $700,000, and Lee Court, who was a stakes winning mare sprinter, including the TCA at Keeneland, the Ontario Colleen Stakes as well, who was a real speedy type. So there's a lot of things that I like about this horse.
Flying Scotsman is like a classy horse. Like Flying Scotsman.
Everything this mare throws can run.
And what's interesting, too, is that with all of them, the one thing that you see is even the ones that don't win first time out, they're all winning early on and showing precocity very early on in their career.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yep.
So this horse, I love this horse in this spot too. And the horse is now with the scratch of the 9, you're going to get, horse is going to be a lot shorter. But like Darren's mentioning, if you want to get, these are the horses where the 1 will take a ton of money. Now, Giant Nova. Yep. And Giant Nova with the scratch of the 9 is probably the most logical, likely this horse should be favored. I don't really have it like knocks on Giant Nova, but just from a betting standpoint, a horse with more upside, even small things like, this is a horse who has some synthetic experience in the mornings, has been, just training on the synthetic training track over at Keeneland, which I just like to look at as a little bit of a positive. They're going to add the blinkers on today for a horse who looked a little bit green. Like we could see, they were definitely figuring things out. Exits a live race. Barn, like a really solid barn who always gets horses that are capable and ready to run their best races. Like when they have a horse that fits, that makes sense, they're usually going to run well. Lots to like about Presumptive Closer. So this is one that if you weren't going to use the 4 on your tickets, I'd recommend it. I know DZ would. Who are some that you want to close things out with, Matt?
4. I wish I could share my notes with you guys. I mean, that was exactly the horse that I identified as well in this race that just was, great
so
value.
What you're telling me is that he's going to be 8-5
and less than 8.
This is going to be like Santon going from 12-1 to 9-5.
Listen, we did this whole thing at Twin Spires. There's a voiceover of the race replay that they just tweeted out of me analyzing the race like I just did with you guys. It went out through Twin Spires. My Turfway tickets going out mentioning this horse is a single in a video. Yeah. So this horse is going to get absolutely crushed by
especially the first click. Everywhere. It's going to open up the first click. It's going to be for sure.
Oh yeah, this horse is going to open 4-5.
And I will say, I mean, Gino, you touched on it. I mean, during our Friday shows, this horse is absolutely a horse that we typically try to identify This is a horse that's getting an equipment change, the blinkers on. You tend to like to see that. This is a horse, this is something you and I talk about a lot with turf races, a horse that's been working out on the surface is going to run on now, to your point about running on the synthetic. I like that. Calumet, owned and bred. There's just there's so many positives with this horse that this was one. DZ's giving me the confidence to single this one as well. I was going to just hedge and put in the 1, but yeah, I think the 4 is kind of where you have to look in this race.
Yeah, so Giant Nova does come out of some good races, like the 2-back race at Churchill Downs. There were 3 next out winners in that race. 2 of them were next out maiden special weight winners. We just saw Gilded Ruler come back and run second against First Level Allowance Company too. So this wasn't a bad race. Smokin' Willie, I think, went over to Oaklawn and won, right? Yeah, won a maiden special weight over at Oaklawn there. So the 1 isn't, there's nothing really wrong. But if you're just trying to get when you're building tickets, and think about the way that we were talking about races 2, 3, and 4 as kind of difficult spread out races, where maybe they're races where they don't look like there's that much speed on paper. You got a lot of questions. You got some droppers that you don't know what to do with. If you want to you have to take a stand somewhere, and you like the 4 in this race, maybe we've given you a little bit of confidence, to get a little, bold. The 7 will probably be one that you upgrade without the 9 in this race now, but I'm still a little bit worried at 6.5 with strings. That was my concern. Like if this
You're
was
also going from Wayne Catalano to Larry Demeritt. No disrespect to Larry Demeritt, but
you're not gonna. That's a very good barn. That's probably not gonna have many trainers upgrade him off.
Exactly.
And so if you did want to spread out a little bit and use a couple others, I did want to mention a few just in case. I thought the 8 was interesting. Like if you're gonna look at the judge and the jury as a player, the 8 Overly Critical, I would be just as inclined to use at probably a better price, because now you're going to go second start on the synthetic. You're going to go second start off the bench. This is a horse who didn't race from June to January, had to need that last start, and should be sitting in a pretty nice spot, drawn towards the outside, going 6.5. We're big fans of Alex Achard. I know Darren has sung the praises many times. So I thought the 8, if you want to use a couple others in here, the 12, the judge and the jury, I wouldn't make sense as like a next tier kind of horse. I'm not in love with him. The 13 does draw in now the first time starter, Hey Boss, but we're all pretty high on Presumptive Closer to try to close out the Turfway Park.
Well named horse in the right spot.
I know. Yeah, right.
It's all coming together.
Exactly. Now it makes sense. It all makes sense. So we are, plenty of time. Still a couple hours for you to get your handicapping done, get your tickets set, and get ready for that pick 5 at Turfway. We're going to go from 1 pick 5. We'll see you, and we'll raise you a pick 6 over at Sam Houston. And shout out to Sam Houston for, I think the format that they have for the pick 6 is probably, for today's age, one of the better ones that you can have. A 50-cent pick 6 that's every day. That pays out every day. It's not a jackpot carryover. The 20-cent ones, sometimes you can really spread out, and sometimes it'll delude catching a bomb. But a 50-center is kind of, it's still difficult. You can't play an insanely big ticket on a pick when you have 6 races to get through. But you feel like, with 50 cents versus like a $2 wager, sometimes that can get really hard on the $2 base wagers, to put a confident pick 6 together. Those things pay massive. That's what's great about the old school $2.
It's outside my budget wheelhouse, I can tell you that much.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's they're definitely tough to get to. But we're gonna get to Sammy Houston, and we'll start in race number 4. So Matt, the 4th race today, as right now, everything we know, they are going to be on the grass, and we are gonna have a 2-5 favorite on the morning line, a heavy favorite, Quinella. So do you think we can get away from Quinella here? What's your approach gonna be to start?
It's going to be hard to get away from Quinella. I think this is one where it kind of like the first race we talked about, at Turfway, either you single up with this horse and move on, or you try to beat this horse with a couple of other options. I'm more inclined to kind of go with the former and just kind of use this horse single and move on. Is a really just a very, very good horse who's run well at Sam Houston and, is 5 for 8 winning at at the mile on turf. Is only 1 for 5 winning at Sam Houston on turf. So that is something to take into consideration. It's coming off a second place in a stakes race last time out. Part of the reason, if you look at a horse like Miss Aggie Bling, who's probably going to be the front end speed, this is a horse that is stretching out really it has run a mile in the past, but is really stretching out on turf from more 5 furlongs to this distance. So I don't like the opportunity for Miss Aggie Bling to stick around late. The only other horse that really catches my eye is Martz's May, which is the 8 horse. I think this is a perfectly respectable horse, but we've seen this horse run against Quinella before, and it was absolutely no contest. I think, again, I mentioned a good stable duel horse. I think Martz's May kind of fits that description as a horse that will probably hit the board, but I don't think it has any real chance to beat Quinella. But I think, that's the other horse that out of all these kind of maybe at a price catches my eye.
Yeah, I was looking, and I probably will play somewhere I use Martz's May, because I can make a little bit of an excuse for the January race and just say, she got caught up battling that day. She probably needed the race. The old toss two, right? You toss the race before she goes to the bench, and then you toss the race right after she comes back off the bench, and you sort of give her those races, mainly because she ran okay last time out. It was only a field of 4. It was a race taken off the grass, but she sort of was just involved tactically. And if she can take a step forward, getting back on the grass, then I think she, if you're playing against Quinella, she would be one that I'd want to throw in. The horse to catch is the one that you mentioned, the one Miss Aggie Bling, who's more of a 5 furlong turf sprinter. But DZ, what would be your approach here with Quinella?
Quinella is a mare that I'm so conflicted on, because last race she finished within 3/4 of a length of Breeze Rider, who is a monster. Like, we were following her last year at Indiana Grand, and I remember when she won a starter allowance at Kentucky Downs and went to Indiana and ran in a starter allowance by 5. And I remember David, my partner, and I were like, wow, this is a nice filly. She got beat 3/4 of a length by Curly Ruth, who's a stakes horse at Keeneland. She won back-to-back stakes coming out of that, won at Turfway Park by almost 5 lengths. I mean, if she comes back and runs anything close to that last race, she'll win this race by a pole. But then I go back a couple of starts into the 5th place effort at the fairgrounds, and maybe this is a product of me being too close, but the horse that ran 3rd in that race, Sunday Scheming, is a horse that we used to own. And I know what Sunday Scheming is. She's not much, The horse that ran 2nd, Angel of Verdun, in that race is okay. She's a 10 to 12-5 claimer. So I see that race, and it's kind of like a stigma. Like, how did she only run 5th that day? Like, I watched the replay trying to figure it out. Maybe it was the slow pace and she just couldn't get involved. I have no idea. My gut tells me you go with the 4 races that surround it, which are all very good, and she's probably going to win. And again, as she runs back to that race against Breeze Rider, you're not beating her by any stretch of the imagination. If you were going to try to beat her in this spot, Matthew mentioned Martz's May. Yep, 2 starts back, was no match for Queen Eller. Was the first race back in 4 months. Might have some improvement. Has some races on turf prior to that are pretty solid. I would certainly, I wouldn't knock somebody who went in that direction. And the other horse that I thought that was somewhat interesting was Senorita Kameta, who's coming in off a bit of a layoff. Again, who seems to run relatively well on turf, needs a bit of a trip to rally into it. I don't like the barn change going to a 3% barn. And this is kind of where you're at. You're kind of grasping at straws.
Yeah, no, that's the problem, though.
To beat the favorite. Whereas the race at Turfway, it was, I know why I could beat this favorite.
Yes.
I like this particular horse.
You're right.
That's why here I kind of go the other way and say, I think the favorite's probably too good.
I know, because we're trying, because that's what we want to do. That's our job, right? Is to try to dig holes in these short price horses and say, okay, how can we beat them? But in here is that, could it happen? Yeah. But we're sort of digging a little bit.
And she's got 4 races out of her last 5 that if she runs any of those 4 races, nobody in the field could beat her.
No. And I know when Jessica, got to give a shout out to Jessica Paquette, because she liked her actually in the Jersey Lily. And we talked about her when she was on the podcast, and I just annoyed her so bad because I kept saying, Queen Ella, 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 A. After night, Jessica likes Queen Ella, Ella. And she I just kept texting her with it and tweeting her, when this horse would run. And so, wait, I annoy somebody? What? That doesn't happen. That could never possibly happen. Gino, a little bit annoying? No way, shape, or form. Quinella, the heavy favorite today. I know Jessica Paquette out there is smiling or probably fastening some kind of a sharp object to poke me with from far across the country as we move along from race number 5 to race number 6. You know what? And that's the thing. As Darren was mentioning too, what's really cool about with the Turfway Park, if you want to take a stand right off the bat and the heavy favorite beats you, you come right back and play a pick 4. What's cool at Sam Houston is with all of the takeout, with all of the multi-exotics 12% takeout, you can really do that in a lot of them. Like, even if you're someone who loves like the pick 4 sequence or the pick 3, and you like that sequence, you want to get bold, and then you miss, you come right back and play a double. It's only 12%. You play a 12% pick 5, a 12% pick 4, pick 3. It, for me, as someone, I used to play a lot more doubles than pick 3s, and I became a little snobbier with takeout. The more I saw, as I got older, the more I played and the more I saw the difference in it. And that's really one of the things I love about Sam Houston is I don't feel forced into certain sequences there at all. I can look through a card and, okay, I like a horse in the 7th and the 9th. Like, I'm going to connect something there with those races, and it's great as a gambler and a handicapper. So if you get knocked out, you get creative, or maybe there's a big bomb that hits and you didn't have that one, that's fine. You come right back and you play a pick 5 starting in race number 5. And we have a 6.5 furlong, $5,000 claimers who have not won 2 races on the year here. Matt, how many do you want to use in this, or give us a couple that you're on your radar?
You could use a few here. I mean, I think this is a pretty deep field, and so and unfortunately, there's from a standpoint of finding value, quite a few of them are short priced, and I think this is an appropriately. You mentioned Nick earlier, who does in the morning lines at Sam Houston. I mean, this is a pretty accurate morning line. I mean, the favorites are where they're supposed to be. And so I'll just mention kind of 2 horses that I'm going to include. Obviously, a horse like Euro Exit and some of those other horses are, and Cat's Second Silver. We can talk about them if we want, but they're among the favorites, and I think for a reason. I'll mention Smoothie Lee, the 2 horse. This is one I think you can toss the last performance. Mm-hmm. And I think you could see, this horse is not necessarily overwhelming at winning, but, did win the $5,000 claimer prior to that at 6 furlongs at Sam Houston. So, and that was coming off a layoff. So that was something that was at least promising. So I'm willing to excuse that next turf effort, obviously coming back to the dirt now, going back to a sprint distance. I think at 4-1, you're getting at least a little bit of value.
The distance feels perfect. The 6.5 too, right?
Yeah.
Feels like that should hit because the miles have seemed like they might be a little beyond the scope for him. And then the 6.5 on the turf isn't really what he wants. So you can excuse that. I think they're just like 6.5, third start off the bench. You're going back to the dirt. And you like go through the conditions of this race. These are horses who have not won 2 races since August the 23rd. What I like is that since that day, this horse has only raced a few times, and they were all better, right? So I think this is a horse who just kind of fits a lot of things really, really well in here. Smoothie Lee will be in the mix for me. The horse who's kind of, I'm going to use as a little out the scratch of the 3, me as Moonbeam's out of this race, and the 9, Flip the Coin Jan is also out. The 6, Snowman, is a horse, Matt, I think I mentioned before when on one of our Stable Duel streams, and Snowman ran really well in this December race at Remington Park. It was pretty impressive, just kind of sitting off nicely, and it was in a similar spot. It was in a very comparable level to this. Like, that type of effort from Snowman, that December 4th race would be really competitive here. And then on January the 7th, they stepped up and faced a tougher group, and that group came back really live. Yeah. As you could see, all 3 of those top finishers came back and won at better levels. Pomeroy Hayes is sharp, has won 4 in a row. You had Declined, who came out of that race to win and has been in is pretty nice form. And then you also had Shifty Henry, who put together some really nice races. And Shifty Henry was just really sharp, solid overall. So that was a tough race. And then the only problem is I was a little disappointed with the effort last time out.
Yep.
You just had a good start. You kind of sat second. Now, when you dig into the race, though, a little bit, it's actually come back pretty live. The winner of that race, G's Turn, won by 8. And then the third place finisher, Zanucci, has already come back to win. So I think the race now is a little bit better than it might have looked at first glance for Snowman to be well beaten there. Here's Zanucci winning in a similar spot on February the 16th. So I'm going to use Snowman in the pick 6 in a lot of spots. The 6 who's 10-1, and probably the 7 DZ. So I'll probably use a lot of 2, 6, and 7 in here in race number 5. Who are some that are going to be on your radar?
Yeah, you guys hit on all the the talking points and the logical horses. I don't really have anything to punch any holes in anything that you guys have said. One horse that I'll just mention, who's an interesting price, the 8 Raison Carter, 15-1 morning line, third race back off the form cycle. I think there's a little bit of hidden form here.
Yep.
Last time out, ran in a starter allowance optional claimer going on the turf at Sam Houston at a mile. Obviously did not fire after pushing the pace, which was relatively quick, 23-second opening quarter. 2 starts back at Turfway Park, ran against Pole Setter, Direct Approach, Can't Hide From Me, ran against Maligator. Those are pretty good horses. The winner of that race, Pole Setter, came out of that race to win another starter allowance, then ran second to Visitant in the Forgo Stakes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then ran into another freak horse named Beatbox, who just won a stake again the other night at Turfway Park. Now, obviously, this horse was nowhere near those particular runners. But
we're talking about a 62.50 claimer here.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We're not talking about $100,000 stakes races,
Exactly. So what you now have is you have a horse that's run way over his head the last 2 starts, going a mile on synthetic, a mile on turf, where neither of those have really proven to be the preferred going or that he wants. And then suddenly, if you go past that and you look at the 2 previous efforts on dirt at Belterra, pretty nice wins. 2 wire-to-wire efforts, granted going a mile and he's cutting back. They're at a $5,000 beaten level. He's at a $5,000 condition level here. Why can't he jump up on a drop in class at a big
Absolutely.
price?
At a big price, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is a race where, even if you do want to, you look and you say, okay, Quinella might be too tough and I have to single in. Maybe this is the race where you go, okay, I'll use a couple bigger price horses here, maybe chuck 1 or 2 of the shorter price ones here and get creative. That's going to be your approach in a few of these races. Maybe it's this one, maybe it's the next one, but there are some decent price horses in here that we've mentioned to throw in, as Darren got one for you there with Raison Carter, Snowman there. We mentioned Smoothie Lee, who's probably going to be logical. I guess the one that I didn't mention, but like a worthy of at least a thought if this is a spread out race for you. The one has some races to get to. Golden Palace. Now, Golden Palace is coming out of $7,500 open claiming. That's a big drop from like a $7,500 open to these time restricted claimers. He fits the conditions really well. He's got a good speed jockey coming off of a very nice multiple win Saturday. The last 5 races were not good. They were against better. You can dig into some of the races down at Louisiana Downs that would probably stack up well here and make sense in August of 2021. You don't have to go too far back to get to those. So maybe, again, if this is that race where you want to spread out, this could be another one to throw in. Horse that has some races to get back to, Golden Palace. So start of your pick 5 at Sam Houston. In race number 5, we jump to race number 6. We'll go a mile on the turf course here for the fillies and mares, 4 and 5-year-olds. I want to take a look at Fayette Blue, who comes out of the 5 furlong sprint race last time out. Fayette Blue was the one here, so had the inside draw. And this was on February the 5th. Fayette Blue had not raced since July the 8th. And if this is a horse who was able to clear a field going 5 furlong sprinting like this with an inside draw, I feel like in this race, Fayette Blue could be pretty tough to run down if she's able to show that type of speed in here and just have a little bit more punch. So she clears off. Now she ends up getting pressed towards the outside. And she kind of fights on pretty well. Like, she's traveling pretty well, but what's going to happen? she's going to get tired. She hadn't raced since July. It was her first start for a new barn. She had she had many reasons to get a little bit tired and to kind of just stop right here after dealing with that pressure. Now she's going to stretch out. And I think right next to her, it looks like there's some speed. Now, Leslie is a very good speed rider, but I don't know if Magical Stardust is really that quick. From the inside, I don't think Alpha 38 is quite that quick. I feel like Fayette Blue might be tough to run down in here if she's able to clear this field stretching out. She's got, this is a filly who was third against open maiden special weights at Keeneland, DZ, back in April of 2021. If there's some of that left in here, she's got a little class, and I think she might be tough to run down. How did you see this sixth race?
I would go too deep. I would go against the favorite, which, I get the last race is fine. But when you sit the best trip in racing where you're stalking from second and you don't make up any ground in the stretch like that, I can't come back and bet you at 8-5. It's just not, it's just, and listen, can she win?
Sure.
Absolutely can win, but it's just not going to happen with my money. I'm using Fayette Blue for all the reasons that you just said. Love second race back off the layoff. Love the speed try, the fade angle, stretching out around 2 turns. That all makes sense. The other one that I think a little bit of a wise guy, the 5 later on for Steve Asmussen. Horse costs $435,000 as a yearling, a daughter of Run Happy who shows up on the grass. You're wondering why? Well, if you take a look at the siblings, Rayo de Luz is a horse that I know from Turfway last year. Speedy type, loves synthetic, as you can see now that Gino's got the PPs up there. And then I believe there's another horse underneath Rayo de Luz that ran, I believe, on turf and ran okay.
Both of them ran on turf, and both of them won on turf.
Yeah, Salmon is the Todd Pletcher horse.
Yep.
So this one's coming off a bullet workout. It's a 4-year-old that costs $400,000. They want to get this horse a maiden special weight win and try, and for the purposes of breeding.
Yep.
So I think Asmussen might be pulling a little bit of a fast one here. I don't know if you're getting 8-1 here. Someone's going to catch on to this, I think, pretty quickly.
Well, this is a stable dual horse, right, Matt?
Oh, yeah, all day, because this horse is going to go off at like 3-1. So yeah.
Especially because you're going to get a scratch, and the 7 is going to be out, so that'll take a little bit of money out of the race too. And yeah, so if we're looking at the way this race may shape up, let's say for some reason the 3 inside horses, maybe the 1 and the 3 can put a little bit more pressure on Fayette Blue, or Fayette Blue doesn't clear or get away as well, and maybe there is some pressure, then that would benefit the 5 very much. You would feel like later on probably sitting off, because I don't get the feeling that she's quick, and just watching her race, but she should take a step forward on the grass. She might be one that could sit and get a nice trip.
Yeah, that 5 I think is, and that was also, if you look back, didn't have the best start. And you figure with Steve Asmussen horse, that's going to get cleaned up. Stuart Elliott's his number 1 jock at Sam Houston. So, people tend to overbet those horses anyway. But the fact that it's 8-1, people are going to jump on this, but I think I really like the 5 as well. I will throw another horse into the consideration that we've not mentioned. And that's the 4, Blood Temple. This is a horse that I'm personally intrigued by. And I think that this is a horse for a couple of reasons. One, has the same sire as the favorite Magical Stardust in Temple City. The dam is out of Tappet. I think this horse wants as much distance as you want to give this horse. And I think this horse, if you look at the notes, was completely unbothered at 5 furlongs and was just not even given really much of a ride. So I think this horse stretching out to a mile, I think there's something there. And I think it's a little bit of a bomb. I'm definitely going to be playing the 2-5, but I'll include the 4 there just to because I don't think it's going to get bet down very much. So I think you could really catch a big price if this horse, again, like you said, if there's a little bit of speed up front, I think this horse might be able to run into it. But that was one that just stuck out to me, intrigued me a little bit, and thought might be worth a play.
Yeah, these 2 feel like horses that could get the benefit of the trip. Like if they're just a little bit better going longer on the grass and they take to it, they might be sitting in the right spot. The 8, the turf race, she had no shot because the trip was so wide. But I don't know, like I can excuse that, but I don't know if I'm willing to think she's good enough to beat this group. And I'm willing to say, okay, yeah, I could give her another shot on turf, but I don't know if that means that she would be good enough to win. There's things to like. Second start off the bench. Like I said, the turf race, you can completely just toss, but I really have no idea how good she is in her races. We just don't have a clue. So yeah. I'd want a little bit more of a price on her, and maybe she floats up and the 5 takes a little bit more money, but Yeah, this might be a race where on one ticket, if I play multiples, I'd single the 2 Fayette Blue. On another ticket, I'd probably use the 2, the 5 who Darren mentioned, maybe even the 4 who Matt mentioned as like those 3, and maybe we try to beat Magical Stardust, especially if you're one who's going to be locked into Quinella earlier on. You're going to have at least a couple races where you're like, okay, I'll try to beat these shortish price favorites, because if they win, it's not going to pay anything anyways.
And that's always the issue with Sam Houston. I mean, as much as I love it, you do get these monster short prices on a couple of horses every single race, and so you got to try to beat them. And I mean, the Caldwell-Luzzy connection is a tough one to beat, but I when I looked at this, I was like, how many favorites am I going to single on my card?
Yeah.
So so you got to spread out a little bit.
Yep. Got to have an approach and be ready to zig or zag in one of those races. As we move along to race number 7 now, we're going to be going a mile with the non-2 allowance. Now, there are a couple pretty big scratches in this race that will at least change the complexion of the race. The 2 Motap, would imagine, was going to be forwardly placed at the very least, is out. The 4 Silent Disco, who I liked as a long shot price to come closing, is also out. And the 6 Lucky Special, another one who is going to flash a little bit of speed, is also out. And I think, DZ, if I'm not mistaken, you had Intimidation as a spot play a few weeks ago when this horse scratched, I think. Did you?
I did, yep.
I thought so, because I liked the horse that day too, and I was watching your video. Now, so let's kind of start the talking with Intimidation, who will be one of the horses to beat in here. Just 1 for 10, but a horse who in the last 4 or 5 races, they've been pretty good. You can kind of dig into and make excuses. It's not as if a horse that runs poorly always shows up. 2 Back was the first start since March of 2021, so now he's going to be making the 3rd start off of a very long layoff. He just couldn't get to a horse named Sam's Time, who's been good at Sam Houston now, who's won 2 in a row and has been very good on the front end. So do you like the spot for Intimidation here?
Yes and no. I like the spot in that I think he gets a good setup, because you got a lot of horses here that want to be forwardly placed. You have horses with speed that are stretching out, that are going to really push the tempo early. And I think that helps his cause. My concern with Intimidation is I think his best distance is probably like 6.5 to 7.
I agree. 6.5, 7. I'd want that tweener sprint for him.
And you take a look, there's a reason why he's 1 for 10, ran out of ground going 6, goes a mile, makes a big move into the stretch, flattens out late. Kind of sees, like, you see a similar trend with his races, and now you got him out here going a mile again. It might fall into his lap the way the race sets up, and I think based on that, the fact that I think Karras is probably going to be favored, and we'll talk about him in a minute, I think you have to use him. This is a tough race. This is a really, really tricky race. He's one of several in here that I think can absolutely win. Wouldn't shock me. If you ask me who my best horse is, I would probably go with Cost Average on the far outside.
He kind of loomed up.
Yeah. He loomed up
in between.
Which, first time against winners, that's fine. I'll take that effort. He's got the enough tactical speed to not be too far back, but doesn't need to push the pace. He's probably going to be sitting somewhere in the back portion of mid pack. He might be able to get the jump on Intimidation here. And I think Cost Average is one that could be sitting in a really good spot from a trip standpoint as well. He's probably my top selection. Intimidation is one that I would also be using, but this is a really tricky race because which of the speed is going to survive, how much of the speed is going to develop. It's tough to figure out.
Yeah. Matt, who are some of the horses that you're looking at here?
Yeah, Cost Average was also my top pick. I just like this horse a lot. I thought it was interesting. It was actually the same reason that it's too bad for the scratch, but I was also really high on Silent Disco. I tend to like horses that show a pretty good effort after breaking their maiden, and I thought that was stepping up against winners for the first time, a really nice effort. That 72 buyers figure. I like the post position. I just thought this race is set up pretty nicely for this horse. I will say I'll just very quickly mention the 7 Declaration of Speed. We talked about the Luzzy Caldwell connection on a favorite in the previous race. Well, now you can come back with that same connection on a long shot at 12 to 1. So I think that's a horse that, certainly you could maybe excuse that last time out as just needing a second, needing another run. But
that's right. They had a race since March of 2021.
Exactly. That was a really long layoff. I mean, that's the thing is when you look at Sam Houston, it's not uncommon to see like October to January layoffs or even like late August to January layoffs. But to see a March to January layoff, like there's no, of course this horse
there was something wrong. Yeah, there was some physical issue there, and the horse shows back up for a new barn now and now goes as a first-time gelding. The thing that I like about Declaration of Speed, and I wasn't going to probably use him, but now with the scratches, I'm going to probably include him with the other two horses that Darren mentioned, the 3 and the 9. I did like the race on the turf that showed he can sit a little bit going a mile, which is Darren was kind of hitting on this with Intimidation. We know that cost average can get a mile, so he's on my ticket for that reason. I'm a little cold on Karras just based on he's going to be a short price. Could he win? Absolutely. But Declaration of Speed, we know this horse can get a mile, and he should be forwardly placed, but he can also sit. So those are positives, I think, with the first-time gelding. And, Luzzy, we know, is going to get a horse out and sit in a good spot. Or if nobody else, he looks around and they don't get aggressive, he could get aggressive. So I upgraded him a little bit when the 6 and the 2 both came out of the race. Because at least he can get the mile. I know that for sure.
And he, if you look, he came out of that race fresh too, because he came out and ran a nice 101 5 furlong about a week after that race. So, despite the long layoff, he's going to be ready to go, I think, this time around. So, those Caldwell horses have just been running so well at Sam Houston. So, he gets them ready. So I really like this horse. You're not going to get 12-1, I would imagine, by post time, but you're going to get a little bit more value.
Great stable dual horse. With the scratches in here, because you're paying for a horse that's 12-1, you're only going to pay $750 for this horse. And when you dig into like last year, some of the horses who he ran into early on in the year, these were some decent horses. Excess Magic is a stakes horse who was a stakes winner at Fairgrounds and who was in the Texas Turf Mile at Sam Houston last year behind Palazzi. This horse was really good for a while. Holy Vow last year was really sharp. Holy Vow, was second in the stakes here at Sam Houston, went over and ran in the American Turf. Just to give you an idea of where they, of how confident they were in that horse at that time. So the 7 is one to upgrade a little bit in here. And so DZ with Karras just didn't fire on the Turfway synthetic last time out. I'm a little cold on him. I mean, could he win? Absolutely. But at a short price, I sort of, I think we're all kind of agreeing that cost average feels like a really solid horse who's going to run a good, you sort of know what you're going to get with cost average. I feel a little bit more safe with him than maybe I do with a horse like Karras.
Yeah, I mean, look, he wouldn't be the first horse that went over the Turfway Park surface, absolutely despised it, went somewhere else and won. I've seen it many, many times. This is a horse that was favored in that Mr. Wireless Stiletto Boy maiden special weight race at Oaklawn. So obviously early on, there were some pretty high hopes for this horse. He ran a solid third behind Anti-Gravity, broke his maiden at Indiana Grand, then went to the sidelines, came back. Bringing him to Turfway was a weird move. Asmussen runs some horses at Turfway. This is not one that I would have thought would have shown up there. So there's a lot of questions that I have about him. I don't really know what to make of him. 50% of me says he could bounce right back on dirt and run, extremely well. 50% of me says they don't really like this horse that much and don't know what to do with him. I don't really know what the answer is. I would think at this point, if Asmussen really liked this horse, he would probably be at Oaklawn and not at Sam Houston. That doesn't mean he can't win this race, but if you're asking me to find reasons why I want to take a stand against the favorite, there's a couple of oddities with him that I think you could point to.
Karras there for Asmussen with Stuart Elliott, who rides all the Asmussen charge at Sam Houston. Let's get to the late daily double. Starts in race number 8. We will head back to the turf course here. And the 6 horse is probably going to take a good amount of money along
Not
with
my money.
Not mine either. I'm out.
That's Richie Berg, who comes into the Tom Amos barn. But DZ, tell us who you like and why you won't be using Richie Berg.
Yeah, so to start with Richie Berg, this is a very simplistic way to look at this. If Chad Brown and Bill Mott can't get a turf horse to run better than this horse has run, I'm not playing them. I mean, that's just what it is. And look, Tom Amos is a very good trainer. Don't get me wrong. Very good trainer. But this horse is an $800,000 yearling by Curlin out of Matty McGowan. You take a look at the pedigree and I mean,
It's like this. I know some.
yeah, like
This
it's
horse
just,
hasn't run a step really
oh,
either.
no.
I mean, they showed some speed, but they faded. Like they were supposed to be much better than this.
Oh yeah, I mean the horse is akin to Denman's Call, who ran in Grade 1 and Grade 2 races.
It's funny,
Tor-
Maggie McGowan, this mare was the workmate to a horse named Fight on Gino that Doug O'Neill named for me when I was sick, which
That's
is funny.
funny.
I knew that name was familiar. That was
That's funny. But yeah, but basically, like it just comes down to the fact that this horse was obviously originally, thought of extremely high. Was at Gulfstream in the barn of Chad Brown. Did not run well upon debut. The horse disappeared for 10 and a half months. Goes to Bill Mott. When Mott takes a horse to Tampa, you go, okay.
Yeah.
Horse runs bad at Tampa. Now changes barns again. Goes to Amos and shows up at Sam Houston. No, just not. This is not a 9-5 favorite that I want to take. Now, the problem is if you go through the rest of the field, it's like, all right, well, if you're against him, where do you go?
Yeah.
Honestly, if I'm playing the sequence, I single Asmussen's filly. I don't know what the heck happened to her last time at Turfway Park. I've watched the replay several times. I can't explain it, but her debut was really good. And if you draw a line through the last race, for me, she jumps off the page compared to the rest of the field. You're against the favorite. Everybody else in here is either cheaper, question marks, has run several times. This horse has 2 starts with one really good one that's good enough to win. I think you bank on her running back to that race and you take her here.
Matt, I'm probably going to go 2-5. My approach is going to be very similar to Darren's in that the 6 I'm okay playing against in here.
Yep.
If this horse wins just sort of by default again, and I've got Quinella in one of these 2 other short price horses, I'm not going to be worried about this thing paying all that much. Actually, I don't mind the 5 in here. Forever Home comes out of that race where this is the horse that was probably one of the real true passers because Sip went wire to wire in that race. We don't really have to watch the race, so we can pull up the running line there. But Sip ends up going wire to wire there, and Forever Home is now going to go second start off the bench. Forever Home, when you dig back and look at the Ellis Park July race, that's the race that jumps off the page to me. That's probably the best turf race that anyone in this race has run. And this horse might be your third choice in the field. So I'm going to go Forever Home along with the 2 Angel Carina, who Darren was mentioning, willing to just put a line right through that last start and play that one off of the debut. Because Forever Home, is one that at least, like, you look at the turf form. You have 3 turf races, 2 of them are good, and one of them you can make a legitimate excuse because it was August, and now the horse didn't race from August to mid-January. Yep. If she can step forward off of that race, I feel like she's the one that's sort of, I don't like anybody else, but I can at least there are a couple things at least to like about her along with the 2. So those are going to be the 2 for me, I think. I'm probably just going to end up 2-5.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, the 2 was also, I was kind of with DZ on this. Like, I don't know what happened that last race out. And so I'm willing to kind of draw a line through it and then just kind of go with what this horse showed in the debut. Like you, I like the 5 quite a bit. I think that last race, what impressed me was this was a horse running maiden claimers, and then coming off the layoff, they step up to a maiden special weight. And this horse showed something on turf. And I think you're right. You can excuse that, second to last effort in August, comes back and shows an impressive turn of foot. Goes from like 5.5 lengths back to a length back, passes a bunch of horses. So you like to see that sort of form particularly coming off a layoff and on turf. I will just mention, in case people want to just, different long shots or different value they want to play, the 8 Wyoming, that's a horse that at least it was interesting to me. It's a horse
that same race where you weren't passing Sip. Sip just got an easy lead that day. So a lot of horses kind of loomed up and then flattened out. And this was a horse who hadn't raced in 8 months prior to, or 10 months prior to that.
Right. And so another horse coming off a really long layoff, Mindy Willis, people might not know much about her, but tends to have a pretty good barn at Sam Houston as well, runs well second off the layoff. So, this horse might have just needed one effort and maybe you'll fire a little bit better this time out. But I'm with you. I mean, I think the 2-5 is probably the way to go here.
if you want to get real creative, or maybe a horse to use underneath as a big bomb, the one horse has some decent pedigree. The one Spinning Year, who's 30-1 on the morning line, and we have no idea how good this horse is. They debuted at Prairie Meadows, but Mystical Charm did win a couple races going long on the turf. And you've got a very capable Richard Aramia jumping aboard, who's starting to kind of quietly pick up some wins now. It just sort of, this is a really talented rider who's won like a lot of races at big circuits. And it just sort of took him a little while to kind of get the right horses. And now he's starting to pick up some steam. So if you want to get real creative, maybe the one, or at least a horse to use underneath, it could be a nice price for you. Let's close things out at Sam Houston. Let's get to the 9th and final DZ race number 9, maiden special weights, fillies, 3 years old, 6.5 furlongs. The distance. What are some of your thoughts on this one?
Tough race. I think obviously the inside runner is going to take a lot of the play based on the morning line coming in from Oaklawn. It's hard to get a really good feel for potentially how good this filly could possibly be. She is coming out of a race 2 starts back where the 2nd and 3rd place finishers both came back to win. So that's certainly a key race. And when you factor in, that into the equation, when you take a look at the field that she's up against, you can understand why she's odds on off of a 60 and a 70 by her speed figure. So I completely recognize the fact that, it wouldn't shock me at all if this filly were to respond, to the move over to Sam Houston and beat this field rather soundly. I think you got to talk about a couple of the first-time starters.
Yeah.
The Steve Asmussen filly, right to her outside, only cost $20,000 as a yearling. By McLean's Music, who could certainly have one ready to fire right out of the box, is akin to a couple of decent runners, including Shakamat, who made over $500,000 and was a stakes winner on turf.
Yeah.
So, this was not a bad horse at all. Now this race, of course, 6.5 on dirt. So it remains to be seen, how the family would perform there. But Late Night Music, Asmussen Firster with some pedigree to talk about, wouldn't shock me in the least. And the other one is Violent Hailstorm, who
seems like this horse seems like they're fast, right?
It's a daughter of Violence, and we know what they could do right out of the box. And the workouts certainly, catch the eye, to say the very least. And again, when you go through this as a maiden special weight field, from the horses who have already run besides the favorite, not much really to look at. And this one is out of a dam that was a multiple stakes winner.
Yep.
So,
won her debut, first time out of the box. Yep.
So where I'm going is, if you're going to tell me I'm going to get 4 times the price on the 7 as I am the 1, I'm probably going to structure my tickets accordingly. And I might try to get a little cute here and beat the 1 with the 7.
I agree. I'm going to play one ticket where I single the 7, I think. And you know what? I was talking a lot with some of the guys in the racing office and stuff at Sam Houston today. Like, if you're running horses like this, Chesterette at Oaklawn Park, it makes sense to come to Sam Houston. Like, if you're looking at where your races are and you're in the middle of the field and you're probably going to go back over there again and be maybe 10-1, and you can come here and be odds on, for you're going to run. I mean, obviously your purse here is much different than at Oaklawn Park, but you are the horse to beat here. So I think we're going to see some of these horses at Oaklawn that were probably in the middle of fields that were struggling show up and try to steal some of these maiden special weight races, because at Sam Houston, the turf races are very good and deep, and the claiming ranks are really good and deep, but sometimes it's levels like this that aren't. And so it's a horse that comes in from somewhere else, or a first-time starter that jumps up. DZ, you hit the 2 right firsters, I thought, Late Night Music, and then the 7. Yeah. Dream Pyre, of the ones that have raced, I guess of the ones that have raced, these 2 right next to each other would be ones that if you wanted to use, I mean, we don't know. We're assuming the 7's going to flash a little speed. The 1, even Chesterette from the inside draw, they've got some speed. Get Out Tonight has shown some speed also. So this is a horse who at least could be in the mix from a class standpoint. I don't know if they really stack up. Now, Dream Pyre was a little disappointing. I think Luzzy sort of just kind of handled this horse like he was the best, like she was the best horse, was in the clear. Now, that was on a track that was a little off. So maybe getting back to a fast track, they can show a little more improvement in here. Tell us how you want to close things out, Matt.
I'm all over that 7. Just, you don't see workouts like that at Sam Houston very
No,
often.
you don't.
So this is a horse that just has incredible speed. And I just, it would not be surprising to me to see this horse wire the field. So I really like that 7 quite a bit. The 4 Dream Pyre, I think, again, is this just a horse that's going to be around? And I think that's kind of the question.
Yeah.
Is this a horse that you really think is going to win? Or do you think this is a horse that's just going to hit the board? Because if you just think it's a horse that's going to hit the board, then don't include it on your tickets.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling this is a horse, because this is a horse that is still pretty well beaten for second and third a lot of times. 5.5 lengths, 3 lengths, 5 lengths. So it's not as if it's a neck. It's not as if it's a length. It's getting beaten by a nice margin. So and it's staying at the same level. So I like the horse a lot. I think the horse probably hits the board again here. But I'm going to try to beat the 1. I just, the question that I have is the transition from Oaklawn to Sam Houston worth 13 lengths? And I don't know if the answer to that question is yes. And the other thing is this horse, it should be pointed out, ran really well first time out in the slop.
Yeah.
At Oaklawn. Might like a little bit more moisture in the dirt.
Yep.
And we saw a little bit of regression that next time out. So that's the other thing, is if you have a fast track, then I'm a little worried maybe about that 1. So I'm going to single the 7. I really like that horse quite a bit. And, if I get cold feet at the last second, I might use the 4, but I just really like that 7 a lot.
And we are about 30 minutes away from the opener at Sam Houston. You still have plenty of time because Turfway Park's opener is when that pick 5 starts. So you still have a little under 2 hours at Turfway Park to get your wagers in. Fellas, this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for hanging out today. I always get really good feedback on this kind of stuff because I think this is what horse racing's like. This is what we're doing at the track when you're hanging out with your friends, when you kind of talk it out. Everybody shares their opinions, shares their analysis, and then you can all go back and sort of, okay, how are we going to put our tickets together now, right? Look at the scratches, changes. Oh, you know what? I can maybe add one more in here. I'm going to throw in that horse DZ mentioned. Or, oh, yeah, Matt mentioned that horse. I took another look, and that's, with the streams that we have, anytime there's a stream that I'm putting together and Matt's on the same thing, and I know Darren, that's why I bring him on, we're not going to be telling you every race to just use the favorite. Right. Why else would we sit here for 90 minutes, an hour and a half? Otherwise, it's just no point. There might be 1 or 2 where we feel like, hey, we don't want to get too creative or we couldn't get there, but we're going to always try to lead you to something that is outside the box, is going to be a 5, 10, 15 to 1 shot that might be able to really help you out. So that's the great thing about racing. Any day it could be your day. Maybe it's a kind of a rainy Wednesday in the middle of the week. You never realized, and it's all of a sudden you got a couple carryovers to shoot at. Good luck today. Hope everyone makes a ton. I'll be back later in the week with a bunch more That's What G Said podcast content. And Matt's going to join me Friday morning for This Weekend in Stable Duel. We're going to be talking a lot of Santa Anita and Gulfstream for the weekend. So Friday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. DZ, what do you have coming up this week?
Very busy. Twin Spires, all Turfway, all Aqueduct, going through our promotions, sending our selections out. Scott Shapiro and I are going to record a video on both the Honeybee Stakes and the Rebel tomorrow. Awesome. So we'll keep doing the road to the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby. We'll put out our thoughts on those 2 races. I'm sure that video will probably drop on Friday. So a lot of content coming out from myself through Twin Spires. Just take it week to week, see what pops up and what they assign to me. It's been growing every week. So I guess somebody's watching. What can I say?
Matt, always appreciate your time, buddy, and look forward to checking in with you on Friday morning. And our buddy Barry Spears, the sniper, will be hanging out with us Friday morning.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Folks, good luck. You still got plenty of time to get your wagers in. If you need any help, feel free to shoot me a message. I know these guys always love interacting with you on social media too. So if you ever have any questions, they are great resources and great gentlemen to ask for some help. Good luck Wednesday, DZ. Good luck today, Matt, and good luck to everyone else out there. Thanks a lot.